What's happening, fandoms? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we react to music videos and shows. Today, we're continuing with our series of breakdowns of The Last of Us from new Rockstars, and specifically Eric Voss. This one's the breakdown for episode 6, which was titled Kin. This is where Ellie and Joel find Tommy and the town, and then they move forward to the University of Colorado. There should be some very interesting things to hear here. If you are not already a big fan of the new Rockstars, they make amazing content and do the work to find these secrets and things hidden in the background that you miss if you don't watch it many times or slow it down or something like that. So let's go ahead and dive into it.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Last of Us Episode 6, Kin, in which brothers reunite and teach each other what communism is. Whatever commie mountain life Tommy's been living, if he was a Desert Storm vet, at least 18 years old in 1991, and it's 2023 now, he looks pretty damn good for post-apocalyptic 50. Let's break down this episode scene by scene for all the references to the game and the details you missed. There is a lot of stuff to talk about from the game, but I will save the spoiler stuff for the end in Spoiler Corner. And by the way, our new channel, The Deep Dive, is now live with a great slate of premium film analysis videos for you to check out. Subscribe over at Deep Dive NR, and you can also support our growing network by getting something at nerdriot.shop like this Last of Us shirt or something from the Deep Dive collection. This guy's called the Vossmanot. Speaking of commies, okay, we begin back in the chilling moment in KC from episode 5 when Henry shoots Sam and decides to take his own life. One detail I didn't mention is how, after painting that orange Super Sam eye mask on his brother, as Henry looked out the window at Joel and Ellie, the reflection casts an orange stripe over his eyes too. The fact that he could not save his brother leaves Joel with a grim fear that he too could fail as a caretaker, which is why he begs for Tommy to take Ellie. It is really the core emotional through line of this episode. We jump ahead 3 months later to a cabin in the Wyoming wilderness, the home of Marlon and his wife Florence, original characters for the series. We see a stack of firewood, a hunted buck's antlers scraping the snow, and we're reminded of Bill's home in Lincoln, the firewood that he chopped and the hunted game that he suspended and dressed in his shed. Marlon has bow hunted a few white rabbits and comes in just seeing the look on Florence's face, knowing that intruders are in the house. And I just love Graham Greene's happy now smile when he pulls the gun out. He's such a good actor who has shown up in a ton of titles like Dances with Wolves. I love this actor. Now Ellie refuses to stay hidden upstairs, and Joel demands that they point on the map where they are.
And your answer better be the same as your wife's.
You telling the truth?
Yeah.
This was so funny.
You telling me the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that Marlon still can never really tell what games his wife might be playing. Marlon asks about the town of Cody, where Joel was previously headed.
You seen Cody?
Yeah, I got close enough. It's crawling with infected.
Yeah, Laramie and Wind River Reservation?
Yeah, Wind River Reservation is in Wyoming, and it's a setting and name of a Wyoming region where Taylor Sheridan's 2017 film Wind River takes place, in which Graham Greene co-stars alongside Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner. It's an amazing film. Check it out. Outside, Ellie takes one of the 2 rabbits that Marlon caught, the smaller one, and Joel tells her to leave it. But it's this moment that seems to send Joel into his panic attack. Why is that? Well, I believe the 2 rabbits represent the 2 daughter figures in Joel's life, Sarah and Ellie. White fur representing innocence. The color white he now sees all around him.
Very
the
interesting.
further west he goes. His paternal empathy is starting to merge these 2 young women. Ellie taking the smaller one triggers him to think about the older daughter that he left behind. Meanwhile, Joel is the hanging deer bleeding out in the snow, the way he ends this episode.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. I'm fine.
No, but are you? Because just a reminder that if you're dead, I'm
fine.
I love how Ellie stumbles on the line.
It's gonna be easy. All we have to do is cross the river of death.
In Greek mythology, the River of Death is the river Styx, which all souls must travel to reach the underworld. This episode is marking the break into the 3rd act of the season, where Joel and Ellie are crossing over into the darkest parts of their journey. Gustavo Santaolala's guitar strings score their walk across the landscape, a rare instance of us hearing it within the runtime of an episode. By the campfire, Joel tapes his boot, reminding us of Tess back in episode 2, and Ellie sees the northern lights.
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country.
As she tells Joel later in this scene, her dream is to be an astronaut like Sally Ride. And I totally agree with Ellie. Sally Ride, an amazing astronaut name. Now again, it has been 3 months, but only now does Ellie reveal.
I tried with Sam.
Tried what?
I knew he was infected. I rubbed some of my blood into his bite. I know, it was stupid. I wanted to save him.
Well, I reckon it's a lot more complicated than that.
And not to bum us out too much by focusing on last week, but it is worth noting that even after his infection took over, Sam still sat facing away from Ellie and he was unable to hear her still. Even though, as we saw with Ms. Adler in episode 1 and confirmed by the producers, cordyceps fixes your physical ailments. And Neil Druckmann and Craig Mason even said that what Sam worried, that when you become the monster, it might still be you inside, might be the case for Sam in that moment. Joel sends her off to bed.
Dream of sheep ranches on the moon.
Yeah, I love that Joel combines their separate dreams into a mutual shared dream. And we match cut from this nighttime campfire to the morning, and Joel mumbles in his sleep.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, Joel is saying supposed to be me. He's feeling survivor's guilt and inadequacy, that he was never supposed to walk this path. He should be dead. And falling asleep proves Joel's fear right.
I'm responsible for you, okay?
Then don't fall asleep.
This is an inverse of Joel and Ellie from episode 4, when Joel was able to let Ellie sleep while he kept watch at night, and then later in that episode, Ellie still fell asleep immediately on the drive. As Joel and Ellie cross what they think is the River of Death, I love the little detail of the snow clumped up on their backpacks, something that the costumer, the set decorator probably would have added to the actors to make sure they look like they've been outside for a while. And speaking of the great outdoorsy costuming of the show, I am wearing this awesome warm canvas jacket given to us by our friends at Huckberry. You can get one of your own by clicking the link in the description. Okay, so they arrive at this hydroelectric dam.
Damn.
You're no
Damn.
Yeah, but who is? So that made electricity?
Yeah, don't ask me. I don't have a clue.
Yeah, you could have just made something up.
Will Livingston, of course, the author of No Pun Intended. And remember, after Ellie asked Joel how gas siphoning works, he has learned to not even begin trying. Now, this dam is actually the location of the Jackson events of part 1 of the game. And here we see residents are in the process of getting the generator operational. The HBO series jumps past that, showing us the full town to give Joel and Ellie a glimpse of a comfortable, safe home life that they could have. And really, a constructive life that Tommy has made for himself after he left his brother. But the cavalry uses this dog to sniff the cordyceps on them. Remember back in episode 1, the Adler dog Mercy sensed the infection on Mrs. Adler, so we know dogs can detect this, and Joel freezes as he goes into another panic attack.
Yep.
So why doesn't the dog smell the cordyceps in Ellie's arm? Well, it might be that dogs can only smell cordyceps if it has spread throughout the body and taken over the brain stem. But either way, Ellie is a new form of human adaptation to the fungus, and dogs in their immortal, divine character judgment ability just love humans who won't ever turn on them. Now, we see the town of Jackson, and it is thriving. There's the Tipsy Bison Bar from the games, the banners for the Jackson Lights Festival 2003. You'd think they would have taken them down by now, but maybe they're just nostalgic. Ellie passes a woman in a wheelchair and kids making snowmen, showing how this community is stable enough to care for children and the elderly. Joel and Tommy reunite.
What are you doing? I came here to save you.
Doesn't need a lot of saving. Not right now.
It's a bit different from the games where there's a bit more hesitancy between the brothers when they first see each other. But notice Ellie's expression. It's mixed and jealous. She senses that she is now a bit less important in Joel's life. She wishes she had that immediate family connection. Ellie's making friends.
What?
What's wrong with you?
What about her manners?
She was just curious. Kids around here don't usually look or talk like you.
Well, maybe I'll teach them.
Now, this girl isn't named here, but she could end up being someone important in the future of the series. I'm gonna get to that more in spoiler corner at the end of the video.
Yeah.
Tommy reveals that he and Maria are together.
Oh, shit. Congrats. Don't say congrats.
Congrats.
Yeah, I love that same forced friendliness that Joel just mutters out through his gritted teeth. The same that he used on Henry last episode.
Everything is great.
Dude.
So we get a full tour of Jackson.
House of worship, school, laundry. Oh, bank works as the jail, not that we've needed it.
Yeah, they don't need the bank anymore because there's no capital in this commune, but it sounds like they also don't need the jail, either because people don't break the law or they get shot if they do, or maybe both. Tommy says.
All shared. Collective ownership.
So, communism.
Nah, it ain't like that.
It is that, literally. This is the commune. We're communists.
Yeah, it's funny how in the 7 years that he's been here, Tommy really never made the connection, just showing how a lot of people don't really understand what communism actually is. Ellie meets the pony named Shimmer. That is the name of a horse in part 2 of the game. Joel tells Tommy.
Doesn't seem like you age much.
You, on the other hand.
Okay, so Gabriel Luna is 40 years old, probably around 39 when he shot this. Pedro Pascal is 47, probably around 46 when he shot this. So Tommy should be at least 50 if he served in the Gulf War. Joel is a few years older than that, so I love that they at least acknowledge
56,
how
I think
young
he
these
said.
actors look, even though they gray up Pedro Pascal a bit. Tommy asks,
So how's Tess?
She's fine. All right.
Good then.
Yeah, that's a lie.
She's the daughter of some firefly muckety muck.
Yeah, Joel has to lie about Tess initially because if he reveals how she died, he'll have to reveal everything about Ellie. But as a side effect of this, because he tells Tommy that he's moving to Ellie for a payment, Tommy continues to see his brother as a morally corrupt person who hasn't moved on from that life of killing people to get by. Tommy doesn't want to take Joel to Eastern Colorado University because he's going to be a father.
I feel like I'd be a good dad. Guess we'll find out.
What a shitty thing to say.
I guess we'll find out. That's all you got?
What else am I supposed to say?
Yes, the whole idea of fatherhood still stings for Joel. He once considered himself a good dad, but now he sees the whole idea of fatherhood as just setting one up for failure. And Joel has another panic attack, but notice how Pedro Pascal is blinking rapidly at first, but then he stops and goes wide-eyed when he looks over to see a woman who from behind looks exactly like Sarah. But it turns out she is a mom who hugs her daughter, a daughter who looks like an even younger Sarah. Since it is 20 years since Sarah's death, Sarah would have been old enough to be a mom, and Joel could have been a grandfather. He's seen the entire erased timeline of his family tree. Now, Ellie showers in this teenage girls' room where a bunch of teenage stuff is pinned on the corkboard, ranking the 10 hottest boys. Number 1, Freddie Thompson. Number 2, Taylor Marks. Number 3, Benny Neufeld.
Professor
Number 4, Chad
Smeds.
Wilson. Number 5, Ben Monty writes hotter with a haircut, so he was arrowed to number 1. Also, in the lower left, we see a photo of Ben. I assume that's pre-haircut, where he wrote, "Stay cool, never change." Number 6, Scotty R with an arrow pointing to a beach photo. By the way, sorry, other Scotty in Jackson, Wyoming, 2003. You didn't make the list, buddy. Number 7, Ricky Barney. Number 8, Marshall Martins, arrow pointing to Marshall on a stage. Tammy's fave, she called dibs. I like how she wrote the plural version of Tammy's. I-E-S, not Y''S. But whoever this girl is, grammatical and spelling errors everywhere. Number 9, Dawson P, then crossed out not. Yikes, what happened to you, Dawson? Number 10, Hunter Phelps, and then an asterisk, Professor Smeds, Rolo's fave. Also, how old was this girl? Do you call your high school teachers professor? There's also a note from a secret admirer, and then some emo song lyrics. No one can hear me when I tell them I'm sad and I can't go on. And then the chorus, nobody but me will ever rise up the bullies. And later in this room, we see this girl has a poster for Radiohead's Creep and an iMac desktop from the early aughts. Maria left out for Ellie a Diva Cup, a very practical thing considering how glad Ellie was to find tampons 3 months ago. Since the subject is hardly ever covered in post-apocalyptic fiction, I do just like how menstruation is a reality for these characters. Ellie finds the names Kevin and Sarah written on the chalkboard, candles in front of each of them. Kevin was Maria's son, born April 3rd, 2000, and died a few days after Outbreak Day, meaning he was 3 years old with his mother Maria, a story that I really just don't want to see ever. Please, Last of Us, don't show us that. And of course, Sarah, that was Joel's daughter, Tommy's niece, died at age 14 the night after Outbreak Day. Outbreak Day was the 26th, and this was after midnight when she died. Maria reveals that Sarah was Joel's daughter, and they argue about Joel's character.
There's a whole lot you're not telling me.
Yeah.
Good. The only people who can betray us are the ones we trust.
I like that we have this scene because in the game, we never really cut away from Joel's point of view. So now we get to see how Ellie found out. And it was a result of this nice casual moment between women, where one is cutting the other one split ends. Just two women looking out for each other. Now this town screens the 1977 film The Goodbye Girl, written by Neil Simon. This was the first rom-com to gross over $100 million. Richard Dreyfuss won Best Actor for playing Elliot, who's an actor who moves in with a woman, Paula. The two form a friendship, and it's really sweet. He promises to never leave them, but he gets a huge job offer that he can't turn down. He has to make a big decision. Of course, parallel to Joel's dilemma in this episode, a man who gets stuck with a girl and has to decide if he's actually up to be her caretaker. And I love how they're screening this in the same mess hall where Joel and Ellie ate earlier. Everything is multi-purpose. Joel tells Tommy that Ellie is immune and emotionally confesses how inadequate he feels to take care of her and how his dreams are making him feel.
I just know that when I wake up, I've lost something. I'm failing in my sleep. It's all I do. It's all I've ever done. It's failure again.
Now we get to this big moment where Ellie is reading the girl's diary in the room, but we actually see a close-up of the diary page here. And you can read, I hate my family. Mom told me she would take me to the mall. Something about me and my big mouth. And then she writes, geez, I'm crying on the page. Cheese spelled geese. And then Holly's stepmom has left my dad. I feel so bad. It's all very true and typical teenage girl emotions that Ellie can't at all relate with.
Boys, movies, deciding which shirt goes with which skirt. It's bizarre.
Now, all of this is almost a line-for-line adaptation from the amazing scene in the game where Joel finds Ellie and they have this heartbreaking argument. Except in the game, it comes after Ellie runs away on a horse to a nearby ranch house and Joel has to chase her down. I think it's great that they kept most of the dialogue the same. Even the wallpaper of the room is exactly the same.
You have no idea what loss is.
You have no idea
what loss is.
Now, there is no "you're on mighty thin ice" line, but the big difference I've noticed is that in the game, they're interrupted by Tommy running in and you gotta fight some raiders. Here, it just ends on this heavy emotional beat, which forces us to stay in the headspace of the characters. Now, in this room behind Joel on the wall is a poster of a giraffe. Around this section of the game, Joel and Ellie do find giraffes. Joel envisions decorating a Christmas tree with Sarah. His wristwatch is still working, unbroken. So was this before Sarah died? Well, probably not, because it sounded like his watch hadn't worked in years. So this must have been a fantasy in which Sarah survived until 3 months after Outbreak Day through Christmas 2003. And then from this moment, Joel's mind then drifts to Sarah, age 14, from the morning they ate their final meal from his point of view as he sat across from her at that kitchen table and she wore that same lavender shirt. So Joel decides to give Ellie the choice on whether she wants him as her guardian, and she says yes. They attempt some target practice with Tommy's rifle and his new scope that he mentioned before. Joel proves Ellie wrong by firing a hole right in the H of asshole. Joel explains what a contractor was, what people's politics used to be, and he explains football and turnovers, first downs, and Ellie just sums it up.
So, basically just moving in one direction.
Basically. But violent.
Oh, well.
Yeah, just
Another
like
parallel
them.
to their journey. Moving in one direction, there's always violence, but in a constant fear of fumbling the football. That football being Ellie. As in the games, you do run into some monkeys who used to be in the zoology labs. Meanwhile, the way Joel and Ellie find the monkeys instead of clickers upstairs is just like it is in the game.
Well, at least it ain't clickers. At least it ain't clickers.
We find the Fireflies have cleared out of the university hospital with a packing list that mentions Salt Lake City. And upstairs, they find a map with pins leading to Salt Lake City and St. Mary's on that map, which is the hospital they will be headed to. White pins seem to lead from Colorado where they are, but there are other separate pin trails, blue leading southwest to Southern California, red leading upward to Seattle, green moving east across the Great Plains, white continuing southeast toward New Mexico. Joel and Ellie run into a group of raiders, and Joel breaks one guy's neck, but gets a jagged shank stabbed into his gut, which he pulls out. And I know Craig Mazin knows this because he's talked about it at length on his Script Notes podcast, but despite what you see in TV shows and movies, you should never pull out an object that gets stabbed into you. Now, we shouldn't expect Joel to know that, but Mazin knows how much worse Joel just made it. In the game, the weapon is a piece of rebar, but here, it looks like a broken end of a baseball bat. Joel goes into shock as he bleeds, and Ellie freaks out.
I can't do this without you. I don't know where the I'm going. What the I'm gonna do.
Last episode, we learned Ellie's greatest fear. I'm scared of ending up alone. And now that is where she seems to be. The music we hear over the end is a softer cover of Depeche Mode's Never Let Me Down Again. That was a song that ended episode 1, and it was a song that Craig Mazin promised would come back later in the season. Here it is. Remember, that 80s song was, in that moment,
trouble.
like all 80s songs, meant to communicate danger ahead, according to Frank's radio code. So in addition to danger approaching, we also end this episode in Joel's greatest fear and Ellie's greatest fear together. Just like the way he merged their dreams of sheep on the moon, now their greatest fears are merged together. She is facing being left alone. He is facing being too weak to be able to take care of a daughter. And speaking of fathers and daughters, the vocalist covering Never Let Me Down Again is actually Craig Mazin's own daughter, Jessie. So episode 1 was male Gen Xers singing these words. Now it's a solitary voice of a Gen Zer singing it back to them in a kind of broken prayer. Okay, there's quite a bit to discuss here in Spoiler Corner, and there's gonna be spoilers for both The Last of Us Part 1 and Last of Us Part 2 games coming ahead. So this episode jumps ahead 3 months, and I don't think it's meant to just show the passage of time beyond Henry and Sam. Practically speaking, it also gives Marlene enough time to make it from the Boston QZ to Salt Lake City, setting up her return in the events of the hospital that I assume will be this season's finale. Ellie's dream of becoming an astronaut, setting up the moment in the game when Joel takes her to a NASA exhibit as a birthday present with an audio recording that allows her to imagine she's an astronaut. In the games, we do not see Jackson until after the events of Salt Lake City, of course, really the opening sections of part 2 of the game. So a lot of the stuff from part 2 they hinted at in this episode, and that includes the girl who stares at Ellie, whom Ellie yells at, who most likely will be revealed as Dina, the partner from part 2 of the game. Their introduction in the game is pretty similar to what we see here. Also, we probably caught Joel mentioning he wanted to be a singer. Sounds like this might be setting up the whole thing of Joel saying he wanted to teach Ellie guitar and singing in the game. But most importantly, the map. It's interesting for one trail to lead back toward New Mexico and Texas, because in the game, Tommy tells Joel at the dam that he had gone back to Austin at some point, went back to their house, most of it had been looted except a photo of Joel and Sarah, and Joel does not want the photo. The fact that we don't see that moment here in this episode. It makes me wonder if they might be saving that moment for the season finale. Also, on that map, trails to Seattle and a trail to Southern California. Seattle, a very important location to go to in part 2, and then after Seattle, you go on a trip to Santa Barbara and looking for a Firefly community on Catalina Island. So I think this map right here charts out everything we're headed to in season 2. Okay, another reminder to subscribe to the deep dive and watch one of the amazing launch day videos that we have on the channel, and support New Rockstars by going to nerdriot.shop. We have this Last of Us inspired shirt, it's awesome. But if you want me to close my jacket, this Huckberry jacket's also very cool. Links for both in the description below. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EABoss. Follow New Rockstars and subscribe to New Rockstars for breakdowns of everything you love. Thanks for watching, bye.
Again, just stunning amounts of detail. Eric does such good work. I think my favorite pieces of this probably come in the analysis of the map and what pieces of the storyline each of those little pin trails likely will lead us to. Like I've said a few times, my memory of the gameplay itself is a little hazy, so I don't remember all of the, the keen details, but I remember most of the settings and I remember most of the major plot points, and it's fun to get reminded of those during those spoiler sections, because the game was just amazing to go through, and seeing how they're adapting that and rearranging slightly some of the details and making minor changes to locations or the order of how things occur. It's really interesting because it gives you a little bit of a view into the mind of the showrunner and how they are adapting the storyline from one medium to another, and that's always a difficult task, but they seem to be managing it quite well here. So we'll leave it there. A reminder that if you're not already a big fan of the new Rockstars, their content is stunning, and it crosses all sorts of the most popular pop culture IPs: Star Wars, the MCU, DC comic stuff, whatever it is that's great, they're gonna cover it, and you should check them out. Thank you guys so much for your support, all the likes and comments, and keeping the algorithm running. A subscription or two won't hurt, I'm sure. If you followed along this far, you might be worth it. And we'll see you in the next video.